TxDOT and the Texas Department of Public Safety are committed to putting our resources to work to reduce the level of impaired driving in Texas and support the work of law enforcement to take drunk drivers off the road. Next, we'll hear from the executive directors of both agencies to learn about how each agency is approaching the challenge. First, we'll hear from TxDOT's Executive Director, General Joe Weber, and then from DPS's Executive Director, Stephen McGraw. General Joe Weber is a retired general in the U.S. Marine Corps and was named TxDOT's Executive Director just 6 months ago. He has an extensive infrastructure background and has overseen road, port, rail systems, and aviation projects. We're delighted that General Weber is passionate about safety too. General Weber will highlight TxDOT's actions, measures, and programs to combat impaired driving, followed by Director McGraw, who will review the steps that DPS is taking to deal with this pressing issue for Texas. General Weber?
Thanks, Carol, and thanks to the Traffic Division at TxDOT for participating in this summit, bring everybody here together. And it's good to be here with the Colonel and Director of DPS and everyone in law enforcement here. Let me see if I can figure out how to make this work. I'm not going to talk long. I'm going to show you a few pictures. Am I right here? And if I make it do that, it goes to the next one. And if I do that one, it goes back. Okay, that's great. When I came to TxDOT 7 or 8 months ago, one of the shocking statistics to me was that 3,500 people in the state of Texas die on our highways every year. And, of course, people have said, well, my gosh, that's not too bad. We have 25 million people living in the state. It's bad. It's embarrassing to me that we have 3,500. And albeit many of those accidents happen because people make poor decisions, but the fact of the business is 3,500 citizens die every year in the great state of Texas. I looked up the definition of impaired, and I know we're focused on drunk drivers and the solutions and the problems here, but I just want everybody to be aware that the definition of impairment is something that keeps you from performing whatever you're doing effectively and appropriately. And so wouldn't it be nice if drunk driving was all our great law enforcement people and everybody in here had to worry about? But you add to that now, because of what's happened over the years, sleep deprivation, prescription drugs, non-prescription drugs, and then people that are impaired because they're not being able to do what they're supposed to do because of these things right here. So you add all that to the problem of the drunk driver, and it makes this so much more complicated and the problem so much more difficult. But I just want to stay on with the impaired driving through alcohol a little bit and tell you what TxDOT is doing. The other point I want to make on that system is it's not just about our roads and our bridges and the safety in them. The transportation system in the state of Texas is not just all about roads. We got bicyclists out there, we got parks, we got recreation, we got aviation, we got rail, we got all sorts of things going on out there that impaired drivers of airplanes, trains, cars, buses, bicycles, lawnmowers, I don't care what it is, has an effect on the problem out here. And it's just not always about the highway, okay? We need to think about that. Okay, our next slide. That's the mission of TxDOT. And I think it's very appropriate for this summit because it starts out working with others. And that's exactly what y'all are doing. You're coming in here, sharing your thoughts, your ideas, trying to work with each other on this problem that is difficult, but it's not going to go away. So we're going to have to keep working with each other for some time on figuring out solutions how to do that, and that's what this does. Safety, to provide safe and reliable transportation, Texas. There's no doubt in my mind we've got the greatest engineers in the state, designing, constructing, building great roadway systems and bridges. Doesn't do a bit of good if the people that use that infrastructure are not acting in a safe manner. Therefore, it behooves us as TxDOT to work with DPS and all our local authorities, whoever we have to make sure that on this great infrastructure we're going to put out there, people are educated and trained and understand that they have to act responsibly and safe in those. Safety solutions. At TxDOT, we kind of look at it in the 3 E's. There's engineering, education, enforcement. Again, I talked about our engineers, and it's very expensive, as many of you know in this room, to build roads and bridges. More expensive to build safe roads and bridges. And why do we have to build safe roads and bridges? Because we have people out there that make poor choices. And we have to construct and build safe roads and bridges, not particularly to protect solely those who make poor choices, but protect the innocent who, as a consequence of those who make poor choices, also have to suffer. So the engineers are aware of this. That's very much part of the solution, and I think TxDOT does a great job in thinking about those things as we design your road systems. Education's another piece of that. And I will say this, all accidents, excluding an earthquake or something like that that we absolutely have no control over, all accidents are preventable. Every single accident is preventable. I believe that. And that's why the education piece is so important. You can take the horse to water, you can't make the horse drink, but that does not relieve us of our responsibility to educate people as much as we can to prevent these things from happening. Y'all are aware of that. And finally, the stick and the accountability. The previous speaker talked a little bit about that, and it is, in fact, very effective. And it's something that is a deterrent, and sometimes it is the best. People just knowing, man, if I do this, I've ruined my life forever or somebody else's life forever. And guess what? It's going to cost me financially and legally. That has to be out there. It just simply has to be a part of the solution. Okay, everything's about money. So what's TxDOT doing? Let's first talk about money. Almost $20 million in FY15 to support the things that we are all here talking about and trying to solve. 117 grants for many programs and activities that many of you in this room take advantage of and enjoy. It's not a single strategy. There's not a single solution to this. Those grants and resources are spread among multiple partners represented in this room: police, sheriffs, colleges, universities, our public schools, nonprofits, local, state, government agencies. This is one area where I don't worry about spreading the peanut butter too thin on this $20 million. I do worry about that sometimes in projects and addressing roads and those other things. You know, if we want to make an impact, for example, in the energy sector, fix roads or things, if we spread the money too thin, we don't get the impact we want. In this area, I don't think you can spread resources too thin. Everybody has got to get a piece of this pie to keep the awareness and the focus up. And that's what we're trying to do. So a little more specifically, how's that done? $7 million into training. And again, training on multiple topics related to and impacting impaired driving. Interlock devices, how do they work? How do you report blood alcohol contents and get it into our crash record system? Parents, educators, court personnel, students, all of that. Alcohol abuse, how do you recognize it among teenagers? How do you recognize it in the workplace? How do you help law enforcement agencies with no refusal and the handling of sobriety tests and chain of custody to prevent the administrative hiccups that can happen that can get convictions thrown out and all those things. Very important in the training. And this year in 2015, we're going to put $7 million toward that. Education, $2.1 million education, not only for drivers, but for those who can influence drivers. And who influences drivers? Everybody, our teachers, our coaches, our parents, our churches, all of those, trying to help them understand what is impaired driving. How does how does alcohol affect one's driving? What's at stake personally and professionally? if you're driving while you're drinking? And finally, what's the legal and financial consequences, not only to you as a driver, young or old driver, but to your family? And so that's where a lot of that money in training is going to, education is going to go. Media campaigns, a big chunk of it this year, $5.1 million to media. And why? It's all about getting people's attention. And I don't care through it. Social media, signs, TV, advertising, radio, whatever. We've got to get people's attention, and we've got to target certain events, certain organizations, certain people throughout the year, throughout the state. It wasn't a couple of months ago, I think, Karen, that I did a commercial. I love college football. And what I love as much or more in college football is tailgating at college football. So guess what? But guess what happens on Saturday afternoons when there's college football games going over all over this state? And so, again, the message was, have a great time at your football games and tailgating, but guess what? Don't drink and drive. And it's not just football, it's holiday seasons coming up, it's everything else. That's when the fatalities are there. That's when a lot of the drinking takes place. So we are trying at TxDOT to target a good chunk of money at some of those events where we know it's going to be problematic throughout the year. Enforcement, again, kudos to everybody in this room that wears the uniform of law enforcement. And I'm going to tell you, I would ask everybody in this room to never take any of these men or women for granted. You see them every day. You see their cars. You know them. What you don't know is they get up every day, probably strap on a weapon, go in and check in, go out on their beat or do their routine, and guess what? They don't know who over the next 12 or 14-hour shift they're going to run into. And there's lots of crazies out there and what they're going to face. But they do know one thing, that complacency kills, and they know there's a lot of things that can go wrong out there. They do that every day. And I know people think the military are heroes, and we are, and for all the veterans and service people in here, but I'm going to tell you what, these local law enforcement officials that get up and do this every single day, weekends and nights, are pretty much heroes too. And we owe them resources. And one of the fears I have, no matter how we combat this problem, is that we don't come to the point where we're saying, well, it's the police, it's the law enforcement. That's what their job is. They're going to solve this drunk driving problem. No. No, the day we get to that point, we're really in trouble. It behooves all of us to solve this problem any way we can before these people get on the road. But anyway, $5.7 million to that, to help them in no refusal programs. Many of these officers are working overtime, and this allows them to work overtime and do some of these programs that are great. We've had great success. They've had great success in such counties as Bear, Montgomery, Galveston, Harris, Tarrant, a lot of those things. 1,600 DWI arrests over the last 2 years because of some of these resources, and we have 70 various grants, programs going in to help our great law enforcement officials. Quickly, just a couple other things. Collaboration, working together, that's what you're about here today. We've got the Texas DWI Task Force, meets twice a year. And again, I think it's important because it keeps the public awareness and the focus of this problem up, and it is a problem. It's not going away. But it also is a great laboratory where people sit around and just talk about what are some of the new ideas. What haven't we tried that might work? And again, the previous speaker brought up some things that I hadn't thought about that, maybe 5 years ago we never thought about doing that. But I'm telling you, maybe today some of that will work, and that's what this organization helps do. Finally, we've got, our 25 districts out in TxDOT throughout the state. I think almost half of them now have some type of a district program going where they're working with the local communities. As I said, TxDOT, as I tell everybody, we don't want to be anywhere we're not wanted. And I got to tell you, as far as construction of roads and highways and maintaining them, you want us, in this area, The local communities want us, and we need to be there for them, and we need to listen to them, what their solutions are, what their problems are to this specific problem of impaired driving, drunk driving. We need to listen to them. One shoe does not fit all. Doesn't fit every city, doesn't fit every community, so we need to work very closely with those organizations, and our district directors are doing that with their programs. And finally, the Texas Department of Public Safety, and I know my good friend Colonel McCraw is going to be right behind me, and when I first got here, I said, I have to be joined at the hip with DPS. And I grabbed Carol and our safety people, and I said, we will do nothing at DPS with respect to driving while intoxicated programs, safety programs, anything, unless we run that through the Department of Public Safety. We have to be together in everything we do on this message. And I just want to tell the director and all the troopers in here, we thank you for working very closely with us. And Carol, thank you for making sure that as we attack this problem, it's done hip to hip with DPS. For those that are here, I think when you came in and registered, there's a thumb drive out there that'll talk to you more about resources and how we use them and what's important to us. And I would just kind of end with this as we think, what's the way ahead? In my mind, it's focus. It's human nature that if you take your eye off the ball, you're going to miss it. And I'm telling you, we've made some progress in this, and I think much of the progress that we've made is due to our law enforcement. But I'm telling you, if we don't keep this problem on the radar, shame on us, because it's not going to go away. We've got to keep it on the radar. Commitment. And I'm not talking about commitment just from us. It's commitment for our children and our grandchildren. And it's a commitment to start our youth at a very young age so they understand what responsibility and accountability are. That's a commitment on our part as parents, teachers, coaches, mentors, leaders in the communities. That kind of commitment to make this important. And finally, resources. And I'm going to tell you, not only financial resources, and we will never have enough financial resources. We don't. Never have enough money. But we do have some. We have to use them accordingly, prioritize, but we also need human resources. And again, I go back to our communities. I go back to us setting the example. I go back to us not tolerating some of the things that are going on out there and trying to establish a culture to where safety and responsible actions become inherent in everything we do. So I thank all of you for having me now, and I'm going to defer now to my good friend and partner at the hip, the director of the greatest department of public safety in the country, Steve McCraw.